The first time I found spit floating in my drinking glass. I thought maybe my mind was slipping. But then I saw the bills missing from my wallet. One by one. Like a vein being drained while I slept in my own bed. That was the morning I realized someone under my roof was stealing from me. And worse. They despised me enough to poison even the water I put to my lips. My name is Walter Green. I'm 72. A man who spent 40 years in the steel mills of Ohio. I buried my wife 3 winters ago. And since then, I've lived quietly in the same 2-story brick house we built together. I never imagined that the danger to my peace would not come from strangers breaking in through the door. But from the very people I opened that door to. I had welcomed my daughter Clara and her husband Marcus when they said times were hard. Just a few months until we get back on our feet, Marcus promised, shaking my hand with that wide smile of his. Clara cried on my shoulder. Grateful. I told them this house was theirs too. That family doesn't let family drown, but family doesn't steal either. That morning I sat at the kitchen table, the sun barely lifting through the lace curtains my wife had sewn. My wallet lay open in front of me. $50 missing. I had counted the night before. Like I always do. The numbers never lie. And there, beside the wallet, was a faint ring of dried spit on the rim of my water glass. You can forgive poverty. You can forgive weakness. But how do you forgive contempt? My hands shook. Not from age, but from rage. I told myself to breathe. To think. To not accuse without proof. Yet, in the pit of my stomach I knew. Something sacred in this house had already been broken. And if I didn't act, it would keep breaking until there was nothing left of me but doubt. Clara's laughter used to fill this house the way spring fills the trees. But lately it sounds thinner. Almost forced. I watch her moving around the kitchen, placing plates on the table, humming some old tune she learned from her mother. For a moment, I let myself pretend nothing is wrong, that I am still just a father sharing breakfast with his daughter and her husband. Then Marcus walks in, and the room feels smaller. He has a way of carrying himself that reminds me of men I used to know at the mill, swagger heavy enough to hide the cracks underneath. His boots leave mud on my clean floor. His shirt half tucked, as if respect were a language he never learned. Clara doesn't seem to notice. She hands him a cup of coffee with a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. Long night at work? She asks gently. Always is. Marcus replies, rubbing his neck. He doesn't look at her when he says it. Instead, his eyes flicker toward my wallet resting on the counter. As though drawn to it by instinct, my chest tightens. I try to remember what it felt like when they first arrived here 8 months ago. Marcus carried boxes with Clara, making jokes, kissing her hair. He even fixed a leaky pipe in my bathroom. I was grateful then, proud even, that my daughter had chosen a husband willing to get his hands dirty. But gratitude sours when you realize it has been bought with lies. The days now bleed together. Marcus claims overtime. Yet I see him home at odd hours, pacing on the porch with his phone glued to his ear. Clara works double shifts at the hospital, and when she returns, she looks at Marcus as though searching for the man she married and finding only a shadow. Still, she defends him whenever my words sharpen. One evening, I find Marcus in the living room, staring at the television, though it isn't on. He jumps when I enter. Didn't hear you. Old man, he mutters. I tell him supper's ready. He nods. But I see his hands twitch as if they've just released something they shouldn't have been holding. At night I lie awake, listening. The creak of the hallway floorboards. The soft click of my bedroom door when it moves a fraction in the dark. I once believed my house was a fortress, a place of trust and memory. Now, It feels like a stage where someone rehearses deceit under my nose. Clara tells me I've been forgetful, that grief makes men imagine shadows. I want to believe her. God knows I want to. But every morning when I check the cash I keep hidden for groceries and medicine, the numbers whisper otherwise. I sit on the porch the next day, watching Marcus drive off in a truck that drinks more fuel than his paycheck should allow. The sun warms my face, but inside I am cold. I know something is wrong. The problem is not whether I am right. The problem is how much proof it will take before Clara sees it too. I started writing numbers on an index card I kept in my shirt pocket. Morning total. Evening. Drawer total. Jar total. If I was wrong, the numbers would prove it. If I was right, they would be the only friend who would not look away. The first entry was small. 40 in the blue jar. 20 in the kitchen drawer under the dish towels. 100 in my wallet, folded behind the photograph of my wife on a picnic blanket. I wrote each place like a map of my own house. That afternoon I went to the market. I bought milk, bread, a roast, and Clara's favorite apples. I paid with a 50 and counted the change twice. At home I counted a third time. It matched. For a breath I felt foolish. Then I looked at the clock and felt a prickle of dread. Marcus had been home during that hour. He came in from the garage with a rag in his hand and a grin in his voice. He asked me about the truck. He called me Walt, like a friend at a bar, not a father in his house. I told him the roast would be ready by 7 and the sink needed care. He shrugged, tossed the rag on the counter, and brushed a crumb to the floor. That night, when the house went quiet, I checked the jar. 35. I stood there a long time. I tried to remember if I had reached in for bus fares. I do not take the bus. I wrote the new number on the card. Neat, as a bookkeeper. Then sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the door. Small things went missing in other rooms. A roll of stamps by the phone. A pocket knife with a bone handle. I told myself I misplaced them. I searched in places I would never put them, and found nothing but the sense that my house was being tilted by a hand I could not see. Respect thinned. Marcus told me to rest when I rose to clear the table. He turned the television louder without asking. He answered questions for Clara as if she were not there. When I asked about his schedule, his mouth smiled, and his eyes did not. He said the bosses kept changing shifts. He showed me a phone message with no name and slid the phone away. Clara tried to hold the edges together. She laughed at a story that was not funny. She changed the subject when my sentences grew tight. She said I was still grieving, and that grief makes a man see ghosts. I wanted to be wrong so she would be right. But grief did not take my stamps. Grief did not open my drawer at 2 in the morning. A week later, the numbers on my card told me a truth I did not want. The jar said 27. The drawer said 18. The wallet said 73 when it should have said 83. I sat at the kitchen table with the card, the jar, my wallet, and a glass of water. I kept the glass far from the edge. The water looked clean. It told me nothing. I decided to test a small thing. I placed $3 in the jar, with the bills fanned slightly, so the edges made a stare. I pushed the jar an inch backward on the shelf, and lined its lid notch with the chip in the tile. Then I went to bed without a word. I did not sleep much. The refrigerator clicked. The heater coughed. The hall floor sighed. Around 2, the hallway filled with a careful quiet that did not belong to the house. It was the quiet of someone holding breath. I heard the brush of a sleeve against wood. I heard a pause outside my room. The pause moved on. Before sunrise, I went to the kitchen. The jar sat where I left it. The lid notch still faced the chip. The stare of edges was flatter by a breath. I counted the bills as if I were counting pulses. The total was lower by 5. I wrote the number. My hand did not shake. Something inside me did. I watched Clara leave for her shift in a pale blue scarf. Marcus kissed the air beside her cheek and told her to drive safe. He looked at mine without looking at it and asked if I needed anything from town. I told him no. He put his hand on my shoulder and walked out, humming a tune that was not happy. I washed the plates and set them to dry. I placed the index card beside the sink where I would not forget it. I stood at the window and looked at the yard my wife loved. The maple wore frost like thin lace. My breath fogged the glass. I thought about locks and cameras and the shame of needing them in a home where I had taught my child to tell the truth. I was not ready to accuse. I was not ready to break my daughter's belief with nothing but a card full of numbers and the memory of footsteps in the night. But I could not keep pretending that doubt was a bad dream. So I made another promise. I would keep counting. I would change nothing a thief could see. I would let the disrespect grow until even Clara could feel it. And when I spoke, I would speak with the weight of proof, not the heat of anger. Betrayal does not shout. It whispers. It lives in the space between a lid and a jar. It lives in the way a man uses your name like a doormat. It grows until one morning you wake and find there is almost nothing left to give away but your pride. The night the house finally answered me, the answer came as a hinge. Sigh. I woke to the softest click at my bedroom door. The kind a careful hand makes when it wants to be a ghost. I kept my eyes closed and listened. One step on the hallway board that always complains. A breath held too long. The smell of whiskey under the door. I sat up and coughed. The shadow faded. By the time I opened the door, the hallway was empty except for a silver glint at the baseboard. A quarter lay on the carpet, stamped with a year I could not forget. It had lived in the inner pocket of my wallet behind a picture of my wife. I picked it up and felt my jaw lock. I turned the coin in my hand. It was the one she once called lucky. The one she pressed into my palm. The day the doctor promised her heart would hold. I have carried it through storms and funerals and quiet Tuesday afternoons. To see it on the floor outside my bedroom was like finding a wedding ring in the gutter. In the kitchen I poured water and waited with the light on. After a minute, Marcus appeared with his hair pushed back and his shirt crooked. Could not sleep, he said. Thought I heard the furnace. Hey, the furnace sleeps fine, I said. He opened the fridge for no reason. When he lies, his eyes checked the corners of the room, as if truth might hide there. In the morning I found my dresser drawer open by an inch. The row of socks I keep in a straight line had a soft valley, as if a hand had pressed and then smoothed. The index card in my pocket felt heavy. I wrote the new totals. I chose questions that sound like weather. Where are you working today? What are the hours? He said the factory moved him to nights again. He said the pay would be better next month and he would help with utilities. Clara poured coffee and kept her eyes on the cups, as if looking up might break something fragile between us. That afternoon, while taking out the trash, I saw his truck door left ajar. On the passenger seat lay a velvet box with a jewelry store logo. I did not touch it. I only looked long enough to see a price tag curled under the lid. It was not a sum a man earns with odd shifts. That evening his jacket hung over a chair. A receipt poked from the pocket. Designer store. Large amount. Paid in cash. I slid it back and stood very still in my own kitchen. At dinner, I waited for the right silence. Marcus, I said. Careful. I am missing cash. Small amounts. Have you seen anyone in the house who should not be here? Doubtications the where. He looked up slow. You calling me a thief? Doubtications the where. I asked a question. Doubtications the where. Feels like an accusation. There is no be there. Clara set down her fork. Can we just eat? There is no be there. I would like to eat, I said. I would like to sleep. I would like to not count the same bills twice each night. There is no be there. He laughed without joy. Maybe you are counting wrong. There is no be there. I wrote numbers, I said. They do not change themselves. There is stated, he leaned back. You forget things. Walter. There is no be there. Grief does many things, I said. It does not open drawers. There is stated, he pushed his chair back and turned the water on full as if noise could wash the truth down the drain. Clara's eyes begged me to stop, to keep the peace that had already left the room. When he left, Clara took my hand. Please, give him time. He is trying. And then suddenly sighed. He was looked of the brown. He is trying something, I said. That night I moved a single bill from the front of my wallet to the back and creased the edge so my fingers would remember. I balanced a pencil on the lip of my dresser drawer so that a slight motion would drop it. Near to. The house took a breath. A soft pad of feet. A pause. A whisper of wood. The pencil fell with a tiny tick and rolled under the bed. I watched the ceiling and counted to 100. Then I opened the door. Marcus stood in the hallway with his palm on the wall like a runner waiting for a signal. Could not sleep, he said again. It is a quiet furnace, I said. We looked at each other. He blinked first. In the morning, the bill I had creased was gone. In its place lay a smooth one that did not belong to my fingers. The index card took another number. The card had begun as proof for me. It had become a prayer for Clara. I made coffee and waited at the table. When they came down, I poured for all three of us. I placed my wallet on the table where a man would have to see it to ignore it. Where were you last night after midnight? I asked. On the porch, he said. It was raining, I said. He looked at me with a smile that asked what I would do with that fact. Clara rubbed her temples. Please. Not before work. And was the date. I did not have a camera. I did not have a recording. I had a pencil on the floor and a quarter in my pocket and a house that smelled like whiskey in the dark. I had a daughter who loved a man who made my walls feel like paper. For now, I had questions. Soon, I would need more. Before the numbers and the index cards. There was a day on my porch when hope felt like it could hold. The maple was green. The screen door stuck. And a young man stood there with his hat in his hands and a promise in his mouth. He called me Mr. Green. His name was Marcus. And my daughter stood beside him with that look she gets when she believes life might be kind again. I remember the handshake. Firm. Not too hard. He thanked me for the room upstairs and said he would find work quick. He said his father had taught him to fix what a house whispers it needs. Clara squeezed my arm and laughed when the screen scraped my knee. It felt like a beginning, not a rescue. They moved in on a Saturday with boxes that still smelled like the store. Marcus carried 3 at a time and grinned as if strength were a promise kept. He diced onions while Clara talked about her first swimming ribbon. My wife's apron hung on the hook. For a moment the house felt wide enough for all of us. The first weeks were soft. Marcus fixed the leak under the sink and tightened a loose banister that had bothered me for years. He climbed the ladder and cleared the gutter without being asked. On Sundays he grilled and told me to sit while he turned the meat. He called me sir and asked about the mill. And I heard myself telling stories I had buried after the funeral. On the 2nd month he pressed an envelope into my palm and said he wanted to contribute. I told him there was no rent. Only the light bill and the grocery list. But he left the envelope on the hall table anyway. I let it sit because it reminded me of a pride I understood. In the morning it was still there. I opened it. Then closed it. And told myself this man was trying. One night he found me on the porch and asked about Clara when she was little. He wanted to know why she hated thunderstorms and why she tied her hair tight when she was nervous. He listened. He said he would save for a small place by spring. build a bench for the yard, plant tomatoes when the frost was done. I slept well that night and pictured a Thanksgiving with too many chairs and a table loud with stories. If the change came, it came slow enough that at first I called it fatigue. A missed plate at the sink. A shrug where there used to be a yes sir. Mr. Green shortened to Walter. Then to Walt. Then to Old Man, when he wanted a laugh that cost more than it earned. The envelopes stopped. The bouquets grew larger when Clara had been crying, and smaller when she had not. He still lined up his boots. But he did it with a scuff that said the floor should apologize for being where he needed to stand. At Christmas he gave Clara a necklace that made her eyes shine. And I swallowed my question about how overtime buys gold. He watched me watch the gift and pulled her close like a curtain. I said thank you for the ham he brought and cut small slices for all of us. When the house fell quiet, I stood in the hallway and listened to the heater and to something else I could not yet name. There were good hours even after. A night he made chili and cleaned the stove without being asked. A Saturday he put air in my tires. A joke about the neighbor's dog that made Clara spit tea. And every warm hour made the cold ones colder. Because love does not disappear at once. It thins until the grain of the wood shows through. I told myself that gratitude should forgive small faults. I counted what he had done and what he had offered and tried to solve the ledger in his favor. I held the memory of that first handshake until it was smooth like a stone. I remembered the envelope on the hall table and the way he listened when I spoke about the mill. I remembered him asking for my blessing before he took Clara to sign a lease. It is a strange ache to miss a man who is still in your kitchen. It is stranger to grieve a version of him that never quite existed. Except in the light of your own hope. I would set the table and see his coat on the chair and feel both relief and dread. Relief because a house with voices is better than a house with none. Dread because sometimes the voices sounded like a storm forming over water. When I think of the early days now, I do not wonder whether they were real. They were. A man can both fix a banister and loosen his integrity one bill at a time. He can both listen on a porch and lie in the dark. Both truths can stand in the same room without touching. I look back at the porch with the screen door and the young man with the hat in his hands. I look forward to the hall with the soft hinge and the quarter on the carpet. Between those doors is a corridor where a father wants to believe and a man wants to know. I am walking it with my palms out, feeling for the place where the wall bends. I keep remembering his first thank you. I keep remembering how Clara's voice changed when she said his name. I keep remembering my wife's apron on the hook and the steam that rose from the pot the night he stirred onions. Some memories warm. Some burn. I carry both. Under all of it, a simple truth waits like a thorn in a towel. Something good lived here. Something good is being used to hide something foul. Each time I try to forgive, the house shows me one more seam that has begun to split. The morning after the quarter, I stopped pretending I could outwish what was happening in my own house. I shaved, put on my good coat, and wrote Clara a note that said I would be back before supper. I did not explain. Explanations come after proof. Not before. I drove to the strip mall by the highway. The one with too much glass and blue light. The clerk had pale hair and a name tag that read Jonah. He asked what kind of problem I was trying to fix. I told him my problem needed eyes in the dark and a memory that did not forget. He showed me small cameras that hide in clocks and picture frames. He showed me a lens smaller than my thumbnail that could see in low light and send its sight to a phone. He talked about motion alerts and cloud backups and night IR that makes the dark honest. I asked which one he would buy if the thing he could not afford to lose slept in a bedroom he feared to leave unguarded. He put his finger on a plain black cube and said, "This one." On a shelf nearby, I found a pen that glows under a small lamp. Jonah said it was a UV marker. You can draw a dot on paper or skin, and nobody sees it until you shine the light. I put the pen on the counter and added a door wedge alarm because fear had taught me to hedge. Jonah offered help with the app. I told him I would figure it out. In the driveway, I sat with the engine off and listened to my breath. I thought of my wife's steady hands. I thought of how she would not want her granddaughter's life ruined by a lie we were too timid to face. If there is a kind way to catch a thief, it begins with telling the truth to yourself. Clara's car was gone. Marcus's truck was gone. The house was mine for a few quiet hours. I carried the small box upstairs and opened it on my bed like a careful surgeon. The instructions were thin. Plug. Pair. Place. The app came alive on the phone. A small window into my own room. I closed the curtains and watched the screen shift to a crisp black and white. I walked the room looking for an angle that would see the nightstand and the part of the door a careful man would pass. Too high and the lamp would blind it. Too low and the bed would cut the picture. I nested the cube behind a photo of Clara as a child, holding a kite. Then backed away until the screen showed the wallet, the glass, the door, and the space between where choices are made. I set the motion alert to medium and tested it with my hand. The phone hummed. I opened my wallet and removed the bills one by one. With the UV pen, I drew the smallest crescent in the corner of a 20 and a 50. Then touched the pen to the rim of my water glass where a mouth might sit if it meant me harm. To the eye, everything looked pure. Under the lamp, a ghost mark burned. I wrote the new totals on a fresh card and tucked the old card under the tray where I keep my watch. I slid a thin hair across the top bill and closed the wallet so that moving one would move both. I placed the door wedge alarm behind the frame of the bedroom door. Not to catch him, only to tell me when the house breathed wrong. The planning steadied me and shamed me in the same breath. I kept hearing Clara's laugh from years ago at the county fair. I kept seeing Marcus on my porch with his hat in his hands. I wished it were still true that people say thank you and mean it. But the truth was not a wish. It was a camera behind a picture and a dot that glowed only when invited. When Clara came home, she kissed my cheek and asked about my day. I told her I tidied the garage. She said she would work late on inventory. Marcus came in later with a smell of whiskey like a coat he had forgotten to take off. He leaned on the counter and asked if the truck could use gas money until Friday. I said I was short and kept my eyes on the sink. Near midnight, I set the stage with the gentleness you use when you tuck in a child. I laid my wallet on the nightstand as if I had forgotten to hide it. I filled the water glass and placed it where the camera could read its rim. I left the door unlatched by the width of a coin. Then I turned off the lamp and slid under the sheet with my heart drumming like a small train. The house folded into quiet. Pipes settled. The heater clicked. I counted breaths to calm the tightness in my chest. I told myself I would not move if the phone hummed. I told myself I would not rush out and shout. I would collect the truth and hold it until morning when the sun could share the weight. I prayed for him to choose the right hallway. I prayed for myself to be brave if he did not. The phone lit the room with a square of winter light. Motion detected. The timestamp marked a line I will remember as long as I remember my name. I did not sit up. A shadow passed the door seam. The wedge whispered against the wood. The glass on my nightstand made the quietest kiss. The kind ice makes when it shifts. I closed my eyes and kept them closed. We were both being watched. Only one of us knew it. I woke before dawn. The way men who worked shifts for half their lives often do. My phone glowed on the nightstand. A small square of truth waiting to be opened. The alert from the camera sat at the top of the screen. Time-stamped at 2:41 a.m. I didn't touch it. Not yet. My hands shook in a way that reminded me of the first time I held Clara after she was born. Afraid that one wrong move would break something too precious. Only this time, what I held was the power to break my daughter's world. I went downstairs and brewed coffee. The house smelled the way it always did in the morning, like toast. Like old wood. Like life trying to be normal. Marcus's boots were by the back door. laces undone, soles wet from the rain that had come after midnight. I stared at them as if they might confess. The coffee finished and I poured a cup but left it untouched. When Clara left for her shift at the hospital, she kissed my cheek and said, "Don't forget your pills." Her eyes were tired, but she smiled anyway. She didn't see the phone in my hand. She didn't see the way I gripped it like it was the last solid thing I had. Once the house was quiet again, I climbed the stairs, sat on the bed, and pressed play. The screen filled with the grainy glow of night vision. My room, pale and ghostly, the door opening just enough for a man to slip through sideways. Marcus, his shoulders hunched, his steps careful, the way a thief walks when he knows the ground too well. He didn't hesitate. He went straight to my wallet, lifted the flap, pulled the bills. He counted them quickly, with the confidence of someone who had done it before. Then something happened that made my stomach clench so hard I nearly dropped the phone. He picked up my water glass, looked down at me, motionless in the bed, and then, deliberate as a signature, he spat into it. He set it back in the exact place, wiped his mouth, and left. I pressed pause. The image froze on his face, half turned toward the camera, mouth twisted in disdain. I had proof now. Not just theft. Disrespect so sharp, it felt like a knife to the bone. I replayed the clip twice, 3 times, until the bile in my throat made me stand and pace the room. I knew I couldn't show Clara yet. She would defend him, blind with loyalty. No. I needed a plan she couldn't deny. Evidence wasn't enough. It had to be undeniable, unforgettable. Something that would strip away the mask he wore every day. That afternoon, I drove to a shop on the edge of town that sold novelty items and practical jokes. The sign above the door was neon, garish against the gray sky. Inside, shelves overflowed with rubber snakes, fake lottery tickets, and gadgets meant to shock and amuse. I told the clerk, a young woman with purple hair, that I wanted something harmless but unforgettable. She led me to a display of shock wallets. Safe, she assured me, pressing one into my palm. Just enough voltage to make a thief remember his mistake. And get in the second. We have a Bruvote and Manny work. I bought it, along with a stack of movie prop money so realistic it would fool anyone in the dark. Driving home, the box on the passenger seat felt heavier than steel. I had spent decades designing machines that solved problems in clean, logical ways. Now I was building a machine of my own bait. Evidence. Consequence. At supper, I watched Marcus across the table. He barely touched his food. His eyes kept darting to my wallet resting near my plate. Clara tried to fill the silence with stories from the hospital, but her voice cracked under the strain. I forced myself to smile at her, to act like nothing was wrong, even while every nerve in my body thrummed with anticipation. That night, after the house fell quiet, I set the trap. The shock wallet, loaded with prop bills, lay on the nightstand in the same place my real one had always rested. The camera watched from behind Clara's childhood photo. I slid beneath the covers, heart pounding, and waited. Around 2 a.m, I heard it, the careful tread of someone who believes he has mastered the night. The door eased open. The wedge alarm gave a faint whisper, and the air shifted as Marcus stepped inside. I kept my eyes closed. The sound of leather lifting from wood, the faint shuffle of bills being pulled free, and then, sharp and sudden, the crack of voltage and a strangled cry. My eyes snapped open. The lamp flooded the room with light. Marcus staggered backward, clutching his hand. Prop money scattered across the floor like snow. "What are you doing in my room at this hour?" I asked. Voice steady as stone. He stammered, eyes wide, hand trembling. The camera caught every second. The trap had sprung, and the reckoning had begun. Marcus stared at the money on the floor, then looked at his hand like the wallet had bitten him. His mouth twisted. He tried to speak and failed. So he settled for a curse that sounded small in my room. The camera's red eye, hidden behind Clara's kite photo, watched without blinking. "What are you doing in my room at this hour?" I asked again. My voice was steady. It surprised even me. He forced a laugh. "Wanted water? Your door was open. As there, you walked to the wallet before you looked at the glass," I said. "Then you took what was not yours." As there, he glanced at the nightstand. The shock wallet lay where he had dropped it. Lid ajar. Prop bills scattered like fallen leaves. He nudged one with his boot and tried a smile that had talked him out of trouble his whole life. "It did not work here. You set me up," he said. "Who does that to family?" "It is no one. Who steals from family?" I asked. He spread his hands. "I was going to put it back." "It is no one. Then you would have had to put back last month. And the month before," I said. "And the nights you stood in this doorway and treated my house like a till." His eyes flicked to the dresser. I followed his glance to the photo of my wife. The frame sat at an angle from when he lunged and caught himself. A hairline crack crossed the glass like a white thread. He saw me, see it, and gave a shrug that meant nothing. It was the smallest cruelty, and somehow it landed heavier than the rest. I picked up my phone and opened the app. The screen glowed that ghostly gray. I pressed play. Marcus's face appeared in the doorway. Then his careful steps. Then his hands in my wallet. I let the silence carry the sound of bills being counted. When the moment came, I let it play. He lifted my water glass and spat into it. Slow and casual. The way a man signs a check. He flinched at his own image and switched to anger because anger is easier than shame. "You edited that," he said. "Anyone can fake a video." And it made it grime. I opened the drawer and took out the small UV lamp. I touched it to the corner of a 20 and a 50. 2 crescents burned bright. I lifted the glass and rolled the light across the rim. A thin ring glowed like a bruise. "Do you want to call this edited too?" I asked. He kicked at the prop bills. "Look at this junk," he said. Voice shaky now. "You tried to electrocute me. They're zented. I tried to teach you that a hand reaching for what is not yours should learn to stop. They're zented." He stepped closer. The smell of whiskey was heavier up close. Underneath something sour that clung to his jacket. He put his face near mine and lowered his voice until it was all teeth. "You think you can play games with me?" he said. "You think Clara will believe a bitter old man with a spy camera? They're rating then. 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 Have the rating then. Arsial Y. She will believe her own eyes," I said. "She will believe her own nose the next time she lifts a glass in this house. They're rating then. They're rating then. They're rating then. They will back den bine." And Feng. He reached out and, without warning, dipped a finger into my water as if to claim it. I slapped his wrist away. The glass rang against the wood and settled. For a second he looked ready to strike. Then he saw the camera lens peeking between the frame and the wall. And he remembered he was being kept honest by more than my anger. He tried a different mask. The shoulders sagged. The voice went soft. "I am under pressure," he said. "I made mistakes. I will pay you back. Do not tell her. Head with C. How many mistakes does a man make before the word changes?" I asked. He looked at the money on the floor and picked up a bill. Then another. Then a handful. He stuffed them into his pocket as if he could salvage dignity by owning even the fake. One slipped from his grasp and slid under the bed. He knelt to catch it, and his knee crushed the cracked corner of my wife's photo. The sound of the glass finishing its break was small and final. He lifted his knee and did not apologize. "You need help," he said suddenly. Flipping the script. "You count things. You hide things. You talk to a camera. Clara says you have been different since the funeral." He said, "I have been different." I said, "I learned how to live alone. I did not learn how to drink spit." "Has ready," he stared at me. And behind his eyes I saw the quick little machine that had always run too hot. It spun for an answer and found none strong enough for a room that held a broken frame, a glowing rim, and a recording that did not blink. "Leave," I said. "Out of my room. We will talk in the morning when she is here." And instead, he stood and backed away. But at the door he paused and turned. "You do not want to do this," he said. "You will break her. As we have not the daver. She is already breaking," I said. "She just does not know why. As we have not the daver." He left. His boots carried him down the hall with that careful tread that had once fooled me. I sat on the bed and looked at the picture of my wife. I pressed the crack flat with my thumb and whispered that I was sorry I had let a stranger walk across our room. I poured the water down the sink and scrubbed the glass until the shine returned. The sting in my hand where I had slapped him pulsed with my heartbeat. I gathered the scattered prop bills and put the shock wallet back in its box. I watched the video one more time and saved a copy to the cloud and another to a drive. I set the phone on the nightstand and turned off the lamp. In the dark, the ceiling felt lower. The house had shown me the truth. The truth had shown me a man who looked at me and saw a mark. I did not sleep much. Toward dawn, the truck started in the driveway. He left without saying a word. When Clara's alarm sang down the hall, I rose and made coffee and waited at the table with the phone between my hands. My heart hurt the way a pulled muscle hurts when you breathe. She would come into the kitchen and smile for me because she always did. And then I would ask her to sit. And then I would press play. And the day would divide itself into before and after. Clara came into the kitchen with her hair damp from the shower and the scarf she always wore on early shifts. She smiled at me, tired but warm. And for a moment I thought of sparing her. Then I looked at the phone on the table and remembered the crack in her mother's picture frame, the spit in my water, the contempt in Marcus's eyes. Mercy without truth is just another lie. "Sit a minute," I said. My voice must have sounded different because she froze halfway to the counter. She set her bag down and took the chair across from me. "What's wrong?" "Dad?" I opened the app and pressed play. At first she frowned, not understanding what she was seeing. A dark room, the edge of my bed. Then the door easing open and Marcus sliding through like a thief who had practiced every step. She leaned closer. Her lips parted. She didn't breathe. He went straight to the wallet. He pulled bills and counted them quick, like a cashier who had done it 1,000 times. Clara shook her head. "No, that can't be him. This day in minus." Then the moment came. He lifted the water glass, looked down at the bed, and spat into it. Slowly, deliberately, with a twist of his mouth that carried hate. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. The sound she made was half sob, half gasp. She pushed the chair back as though distance could erase what her eyes refused. "That video's fake," Marcus said from the doorway. I hadn't heard him come down the stairs. His face was pale, his jaw tight. "He's editing things. Clara, he's sick. He's trying to turn you against me. It's leading the crease." Clara turned toward him, her cheeks wet. "Marcus, that's your shirt. That's our hallway. That's you." And you spit in his glass. Crete that it was not. He reached for her arm. But she pulled away. It's not what it looks like, he said. I was drunk. I was stupid. But I wasn't stealing. Crete that it was not. I slid the wallet across the table. Then tell me why every bill marked with this pen glows under the lamp. Tell me why my drawer opens by itself at night. Tell me why the truck you drive carries jewelry receipts when you swear overtime buys gas. Crete that it was not. Clara stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. The necklace at her throat, the one she had loved so dearly, seemed to burn her skin. She unclasped it with trembling fingers and set it on the table. Was this his money too? She whispered. Marcus tried again. Softer this time, reaching not with anger, but with the voice he once used when he first came into this house. Clara, I did it for you. To give you something better than this. He doesn't understand. He clings to pennies. I wanted to give you gold. And me. Her face crumpled. She covered her eyes with her hands. You gave me nothing but shame. It is so. He turned to me then, eyes blazing. You've ruined us. You couldn't keep your nose out of our marriage. You'll die alone in this house and she'll hate you for it. It is so. I held his stare. Better alone than poisoned in my own bed. It is so. Clara lowered her hands. Her eyes were red. Her voice raw. Pack your things. Marcus, you're leaving today. It is so. He laughed once. Short and bitter. You'll regret this. Both of you. But he saw the phone still recording. Saw the proof multiplied beyond his reach. He slammed his fist on the table and stormed out. The truck roared in the driveway. Then silence pressed down on the kitchen like a weight. Clara sat across from me, shaking. She looked at the necklace again and pushed it farther away as if it carried disease. Dad, she said through tears. How could I not see it? How long has this been happening? Long enough, I said softly. But you see it now. That's what matters. And God, she reached across the table and gripped my hand. Her fingers were cold. Her grip desperate. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have listened sooner. I should have protected you. And one stating, I closed my hand around hers. You are not the one who failed. You are the one who believed in love. There's no shame in that. And one stated, the clock ticked. The coffee went cold, outside. A neighbor's dog barked, and the world went on, indifferent to the moment. Two people sat in a kitchen, surrounded by the ashes of trust. Clara wept quietly, and I held her hand, knowing nothing I said would erase the scar. By mid-afternoon, the house looked like a day after a storm. Drawers open, hangers bare. Boxes from the basement hauled up and filled without care. Marcus moved fast as if speed could outrun shame. The truck idled, then cut off, then idled again. I stood where I could see Clara. She packed slowly, every shirt folded right, every plate wrapped in paper as if it were bone. She moved like a person who has learned that haste breaks what little remains. In the bedroom, she took their wedding photo from the dresser and sat on the edge of the bed. The corner that had cracked last night held a white line through their smiles. She closed her eyes and exhaled like it hurt to pull air. I brought her a box and set it by her feet. She touched my hand. Her fingers were cold. No words came. She wrapped the picture and slid it into the box as if lowering it into water. In the hallway, Marcus shoved a suitcase into the wall and left a fresh scuff. He saw me see it and looked away. At the kitchen table, Clara took off the ring she had defended for as long as she could. She placed it on a folded dish towel. She did not look at Marcus when he came for it. He reached, then stopped, then pocketed a set of keys instead. The metal clicked against his wedding band. The sound made Clara flinch. He tried once more at the door. He stood with his hand on the frame that had held our seasons for many years. He called her name, soft. He said he could change. He said I had twisted her against him. The words fell heavy and slid onto the mat. Clara stared past him at the sycamore in the yard. She did not move. The truck door slammed. The engine coughed and caught. Boxes thumped into the bed. A pair of shoes fell and lay in the driveway. He did not pick them up. When he was done, he stood at the foot of the steps and looked at me as if I were a wall he could break with his eyes. He told me I had ruined a family. I told him the family he ruined was the one he built with his hands at night. He drove off hard enough to make the mailbox shake. The road held his noise, then gave it back to the wind. The house went still. I poured Clara a glass of water and set it in front of her. She stared at it before lifting it. She drank and then set it down and pushed it away, as if to say that simple acts would take time to feel safe again. We carried the last box to the guest room. She sat on the floor with her back against the bed and looked at the open closet. A blue dress still hung there. She reached for it and then let her hand fall. I do not know where to go tonight. I said, here. I said, this is your house as long as you need it to be. She nodded and then cried without sound. I sat beside her and did what fathers do when there is nothing left to fix. I stayed. After a while, she leaned her head to my shoulder like she did when thunderstorms scared her as a child. I told her the same truth I told her then. Storms pass. They leave broken shingles. We pick them up. We do not pretend the storm was not real. Evening came slow. I cooked eggs and toast. We ate in the living room because the kitchen carried too many ghosts. Clara stared at the ring on the towel and said she felt like both a fool and a widow. I said she was neither. I said she was a woman who had been lied to and who had chosen truth. She wiped her eyes and thanked me. Later she called her supervisor and asked for 2 days. She called a friend and asked for a couch. The friend said yes. After each call, she looked at me to see if I was disappointed. I was not. I was proud in a way that made my throat ache. Before she went to bed, she walked down the hall and stopped in my doorway. She looked at the nightstand and the glass and the place where the wallet had sat. She said she hated that we would remember that room for this. I said one day we would remember that room as the place where truth stood up. She nodded. She turned off the light, and then on, and then off again, as if teaching the room to be gentle. I stayed up and washed dishes that were already clean. I took the cracked frame from the bedroom and set it on the dining table. I planned to replace the glass in the morning. Outside the street was quiet. The porch light made a small island on the steps. Somewhere down the block a radio played a sad song. I stood in that circle of light and told the dark that we were still here. I wish I could say relief came when the truck turned the corner. It did not. Loss has a long tail. It rattles the windows for days. But the air in the house changed. It was thinner, but it was clean. I breathed, and it did not taste like pennies. I closed the door and locked it, and felt no shame. In the morning, I will take Clara to get a new set of keys. We will buy groceries, we will eat together. We will open windows and let the house decide what to keep. I will hang a fresh picture of my wife and tell her that her girl is safe. I will believe it more each day until the believing turns into truth. Sleep came in small pieces that night. When the house grew quiet, memories spoke louder. They sounded like shoes on old stairs. I lay in the dark and let them sit at the edge of the bed. Some were kind. Others were not. I remembered the morning Clara learned to ride a bike. My hands on the back of the seat, her shoulders under my palms. She pedaled, doubting, until she did not. She turned, saw my hands in the air, and laughed so hard she almost fell. Trust is like that. You hold on until you let go. I am learning the middle. I remembered the mill. Heat and noise, and men who knew their section by feel. Your hands learn when to pull back before the spill. I thought those instincts would save me at home. I felt danger move through my rooms and I doubted myself anyway. I remembered the last winter of my wife. Her breath small. My promises large. We had a rule even then. Tell the truth even when it costs you comfort. She made me promise another rule. Keep the door open to our child. Unless opening it brings harm. She would have understood what I did this week. She would have told me to be tender with Clara and firm with the man who called himself a husband. The early months with Marcus were real. The stuck screen. The envelope on the table. The good work, with a wrench and a ladder. I let those memories stand. People are not only one thing. A first version can be true and still be followed by a worse one. I held both pictures and felt how heavy they were together. Then came the jokes that cut, and the boots left where respect should have stood. The new names he used for me when he wanted to win a room. I heard my own silence in those scenes. I smiled at nothing and swallowed words. I told myself I did it for peace and for Clara. Some was fear. Some was pride. There is a cost to long doubt. Your bones carry it. Your breath carries it. I wrote numbers on cards because I could not bear the feeling that truth was slipping. I set a camera behind a picture because I needed the house to speak when my mouth could not. I am ashamed that I waited until contempt reached my water glass. Toward morning, I made tea. I set the cracked frame on the table and eased the broken glass into a paper bag. I wiped the photograph clean with a soft cloth. My wife smiled up at me from a summer where the air was kind. I told her what had happened. I told her the house was hurt but still ours. Clara came in and rested her head on her arms. We did not speak for a while. Sometimes love is a quiet room. When she lifted her face, her eyes were swollen. But there was light there. She asked if she had failed her vows. I said a vow breaks the moment it is used to excuse harm. A vow is not a leash. It is a promise to walk side by side. If one pulls the other into darkness, breaking the rope is not betrayal. It is rescue. She asked me when I first knew. I told her about the stamps and the knife and the dollars that felt light when they should have felt true. I told her I wanted to be wrong. I told her I was wrong to wait so long to ask for help. She took my hand and said we were here now. We would keep one another honest. We would keep one another kind. The day rose. The halls felt as if a window had opened. I thought about the man I had been in my 30s. Hard on my own mistakes and soft on other people. I thought about the man I had been at 60. Hard on no one. Soft on everything. I do not want to live at either edge. I want to say yes to mercy and no to contempt in the same breath. I swept the floor where the prop bills had fallen. I vacuumed the carpet where shame had tried to hide. I scrubbed the nightstand and set a fresh glass on it. Not because I planned to sleep with the door open, but because I refused to let that ring of filth be the last word in that room. The house felt taller. I watched Clara drive away and felt like a child when the fair lights shut off. Not for the loss of Marcus, for the loss of the illusion that no one under my roof could do me harm. Illusions can be sweet. Reality keeps you alive. I chose reality, and it hurt. It will hurt less tomorrow. It will hurt even less when I see Clara laugh without flinching at a glass of water. I put the photograph in a new frame and hung it where the morning light lands first. I stood there until my chest loosened. Then I sat on the porch with tea. The maple stirred. The street was quiet. A child pedaled by on a red bike with a parent jogging close behind. One hand on the seat. One open and ready to let go. I watched until they turned the corner. Then I went inside and began the work of the day. By evening, a steadiness had returned. The rooms did not lean. I set out 3 plates by habit, and then put one back with a small smile that did not hurt. I said grace. I thanked the day for its pain and for its mercy. I asked for wisdom to keep my door open to good love and closed to contempt. I ate slowly. I washed my plate. I turned off the lights. The days that followed felt both lighter and lonelier. Without Marcus's boots in the hall or his voice circling rooms, The house seemed to breathe again. Yet quiet can sting as much as it soothes. Every evening, when I set 2 mugs on the counter out of habit, I remembered my wife's absence, and now the silence left behind by a broken marriage under my roof. Clara moved her things piece by piece. Some she took to a friend's apartment. Some she left here. She kept saying it was temporary, that she needed time to think. I didn't press. Pain is not a clock. It keeps its own hours. She worked her shifts, came home when she could, and we shared dinners heavy with silence but also with an honesty we hadn't known for months. When she smiled, even faintly, it looked like a window being pushed open after a long winter. Neighbors asked questions I didn't answer. They saw the truck gone, the boxes carried out in anger. I told them Clara was staying with me for a while. That was enough. The truth was not theirs to carry. It belonged to us, to the walls that had witnessed it, and to the camera still hidden behind her childhood photo. I hadn't removed it yet. Some scars don't come off easily. One night, Clara asked if I hated Marcus. I thought long before answering. Hate is a fire that burns the vessel that holds it. I told her I pitied him, because a man who poisons his own family will never taste peace. But I also told her pity is not forgiveness. Forgiveness comes when someone owns what they've done. He had walked away carrying only lies. In quiet hours, I walked the rooms, touching familiar corners, repairing small things I had ignored. A loose hinge, a dent in the wall, a scuff on the floorboard where a suitcase had slammed. Every fix felt like reclaiming a piece of the house. Every nail hammered straight was a promise that disrespect would not have the final word. I thought often of my wife. I imagined what she would say if she saw us now, Clara bruised by betrayal, me carrying the weight of having revealed it. I believe she would have said what she always did. That truth, no matter how heavy, is kinder than illusion. I took comfort in that. Clara eventually gathered the courage to laugh again. She told me stories from the hospital, about a child who offered her a sticker, about an old patient who insisted she take home a rose from the gift shop. Her laugh cracked at first, but each time it lasted longer. I knew then she was healing, slowly, the way broken bones do, painful at first, then stronger than before. As for me, I learned something I should have known all along. Age does not make a man invisible. It does not erase his right to be respected. Trust is not charity. It is a covenant. When it is broken, the wound must be cleaned, not ignored. I had chosen to face it, and though it cost us, it also saved us. Now the nights are quieter, and I can drink from my glass without fear. I sit on the porch with tea, watching the maple shift with the wind. Sometimes I hear Marcus's voice in memory, promising work, promising loyalty. I let the memory pass like smoke. What remains is Clara's presence, her laughter returning, and the steady truth that a house built on honesty may bend, but it will not break. Justice was not revenge. It was light shown into shadows. It was a father refusing to bow his head when contempt tried to live under his roof. It was the courage to let his daughter see what love should never look like. The house is mine again, though scarred. And scars are proof not just of pain, but of survival. I lock the door each night, not from fear, but from a calm certainty. Inside these walls, respect lives here again.